To Canaan's land I'm on my way, where the soul never dies. My darkest night will turn to day, where the soul never dies. No sad farewell, no tear.
As you can see from the title slide, we are going to be starting a few lessons on the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel is one that I feel like we have probably all read or been, taught since we were little, because we talk about the account of Daniel in the lion's den, and many years at Maywood we've talked about that particular account throughout their Bible class lessons, and some of their junior chapel speakers they tend to go with this story because it's one that we like to for the kids to learn, but it's one I think that a lot of people can relate to, not necessarily like they experienced it, but it's easy for them to develop the lesson plan. But I think for this next few times whenever I get to speak, we're going to dive deeper than just looking at Daniel in the lion's den. And I want you to imagine that you've been taken against your will and you find yourself in a place where everything is completely different. The series is about a group of young men who found themselves being taken, and it was against their will to live in a foreign land where their faith was going to be tested. These young men, they faced various challenges and obstacles where they had to decide whether they would remain faithful and be a light for God in the midst of the dark that they were around, or if they were going to compromise their faith and do with what they were told. See, Daniel and his friends, they find themselves in a dark place, and we'll start that in Daniel chapter 1, verses 1 through 7, we'll see. It says, "In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate, and of the wine that he drank. And they were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called..." That's where I stopped at on that. All right. "But Nebuchadnezzar, he was one of the most powerful kings over one of the greatest empires in the world in history. And he attacked Jerusalem as an instrument of God's judgment." We see that in Jeremiah chapter 20, verses 4 through 6. It says, "For thus says the Lord, Behold, I will make you a terror to yourself and to all your friends. They shall fall by the sword of their enemies while you look on. And I will give all Judah into the hand of the king of Babylon. He shall carry them captive to Babylon and shall strike them down with the sword. Moreover, I will give all the wealth of the city, all its gains, all its prized belongings, and all the treasures of the kings of Judah into the hand of their enemies, who shall plunder them and seize them and carry them to Babylon. And you, Pashur, and all who dwell in your house shall go into captivity. To Babylon you shall go, and there you shall die, and there you shall be buried, you and all your friends to whom you have prophesied falsely." And over in chapter 25, we see in verses 1 through 11, it says, "The word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, that was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, which Jeremiah the prophet spoke to all the people of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem. For 23 years, from the 13th year of Josiah, the son of Amon, king of Judah, to this day the word of the Lord has come to me, and I have spoken persistently to you. But you have not listened. You have neither listened nor inclined your ears to hear, although the Lord persistently sent to you all his servants, the prophets, saying, Turn now, every one of you, from his evil way and evil deeds, and dwell upon the land that the Lord has given to you and your fathers from old and forever. Do not go after other gods to serve and worship them, or provoke me to anger with the works of your hands. Then I will do you no harm. Let you have not listened to me, declares the Lord, that you might provoke me to anger with the work of your hands to your own harm. Therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, because you have not obeyed my words, behold, I will send for all the tribes of the north, declares the Lord, and for Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and I will bring them against this land and its inhabitants, and against all these surrounding nations. I will devote them to destruction and make them a horror, a hissing, and an everlasting desolation. Moreover, I will banish from them the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride, the grinding of the millstones and the light of the lamp. This whole land shall become a ruin and a waste, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. See, Nebuchadnezzar, he attacked Jerusalem as God commanded him to. Nebuchadnezzar took captive some of Judah's brightest young men, and he wanted them to forget about God and his ways. He isolated, indoctrinated, and integrated them into the ways of the Babylonians. He took them and wanted them to just basically forget everything that they had ever learned in their entire life and do what he wanted them to do. You know, sometimes our first reaction to being in dark places is frustration, and we complain. Now, Daniel and his friends, they teach us something very important that we should learn whenever we find ourselves in certain dark places, you know, because we probably will find ourselves in certain situations that we really don't want to be in at some point in our life. The first thing that I think we should learn is that we cannot control our circumstances, but we can control our responses to them. If we're going back in Daniel chapter 1, we'll pick up in verse 8 and see how Daniel responded to this. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who assigned your food and your drink, for why should he see that you were in worse condition than the youths who are of your own age? So you would endanger my head with the king? And then Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. And then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you. And deal with your servants according to what you see. And so he listened to them in this manner and tested them for 10 days. You see, Daniel and his three friends, they could not do anything about being in Babylon. They were held captive. All right, it was beyond their control. You know, they didn't choose to go there. And his friends, Daniel and his friends, they chose to stand out, though, and to be a light by not engaging in what everyone else was doing. Not just going along with, you know, everybody else just for the sake of it. You know, Daniel and his friends, they did not choose the easy way out, so to speak. Exodus chapter 34, verse 15 says, Lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and when they whore after their gods and sacrifice to their gods, and you are invited, you eat of his sacrifice. And 1 Corinthians 10, 20 through 22, No, I imply that what pagans sacrifice, they offer to demons and not to God. I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of the demons. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons. Shall we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? You know, they did not try to justify eating the king's food and blending in just to blend in and not get noticed. They chose to stand out for their faith. You know, three things to remember if we want to stand out and be a light in the darkness like Daniel is the first thing is we cannot allow ourselves to blend in. No matter how easy it seems just to blend in with the crowd, we cannot blend in with the crowd. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. You know, we choose to become a Christian. We're committing our life to God, but we should also be committing our life to say we're not going to conform to the world. We're not going to just do what the world is doing just to blend in with others. You know, there's a lot of things that people in our community probably do that we shouldn't be doing. And hopefully we choose to stand out against that or just to isolate ourselves from that situations that other people in this community, in this world are doing. You know, but too many times I feel like we don't say anything about it, or ourselves, we go along with it just so we don't, you know, ruffle any feathers. We just choose to blend in and just not say anything. But we cannot let ourselves blend in with the world. 1 Peter chapter 1, 15 and 16 says, But as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. Since it is written, You shall be holy, for I am holy. You know, if we choose to follow God, we need to live a holy life, not live the way of the world like so many people do. Another thing that we need to learn and remember is that we cannot wait until a defining moment to decide to be a light in darkness. Psalm 119 verses 9 through 11 says, How can a young man keep his way pure? By guarding it according to your word. With my whole heart I seek you. Let me not wander from your commandments. I have stored up your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. You know, I think many times in our life, before we choose to take a stand on something or before we make a big decision, we let something happen, some defining moment, whether good or bad, before we, decide to follow Christ or before we decide to, do what Christ would do. We can't wait for that, defining moment just to happen in our life to have that faith to stand out. We've got to be in God's word. We've got to be praying. 1 Thessalonians 5:17 says, pray without ceasing. That means never stop praying. But so many times I think we do. We talked a little bit in class this morning in the team room about, choosing to follow Jesus. Is it out of our convenience or is it because we're making a commitment to him? And many people, they will choose to become a Christian out of convenience. You say, maybe you get baptized at a church camp or another youth event or even here at church. We do it because it's out of convenience, or maybe because we've seen other people do it and we know that's what we need to do, or because somebody else told us what we need to do. And if we only stay in that convenience area with Christ, when something comes that's harder for us to deal with and we haven't been relying on him, we haven't been studying God's word and praying and talking to him daily, what's going to happen? We're going to be like all those disciples that, or the groups, the crowds that followed Jesus out of convenience or because they saw him perform miracles, saw him feed the 5,000, saw him do all these things, but when the going got tough, they turned away. If we stay in that point where, it's out of convenience for us to be a Christian, only when it's convenient for us, we're going to be like those. We're going to turn away when the going gets tough. When we get in those dark places, like Daniel and his friends were in, we're going to throw in the towel because we don't have the faith to stand firm. And the last thing I think that we need to remember if we want to stand out and we want to be a light in the darkness is that we can have the right attitude and approach. 1 Corinthians 13, verses 1 through 3 says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but I have not love, I gain nothing. There's that recurring word, love. You could probably go through the entire Bible, and many people would say that if they had to pick out one theme, it would be love. We're told to love our neighbors. We're told to love our enemies. If we do all of these things, but we don't love, we gain nothing. Romans 12, verse 18 says, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. That one's hard to grasp at times for most of us because we don't like to be wronged. We don't like for people to do something to us to hurt our feelings or to say harsh words to us. And when those things do happen, we get frustrated. Maybe we complain to others. Or worse, maybe we say something back even more harsh to the person that said the thing to us or did the thing to us. We're always trying to get revenge, it seems like, on certain people. But Romans 12, it tells us to live peaceably with all. What if we decided the next time somebody said a harsh word or did something, we just turned the other cheek? What if we just let it go and didn't focus on it day and night for weeks at a time? Because, many of us probably, we get in that mindset of, I can't wait to get back at them for doing this. Or we get home and we start talking to our spouses or whoever may be there and say, can you believe that this person did this? And we sit there and say, if I'd only just said this right whenever that happened, because all the good comebacks to people, they come to our mind when later on when we're out of that current situation. And we say, if I'd have just said this, I'd have really showed them. Or if I'd have just done this, it'd have been different. I would have got my revenge, quicker. But that's not how Christians are supposed to live. We're supposed to be like Daniel in that sense, where we stand out on our faith. We be the light. We sing the song, "This Little Light of Mine, We're going to Let It Shine." But how often are we really letting our light shine in our community? How often are we really letting our light shine in this congregation? You know, there's many times in many different congregations, people will, get mad with at each other. And ultimately, if it goes to the furthest extent, congregations split over something that could have been, easily resolved. If we would just take the time to show love to one another, to show compassion to one another, instead of just getting mad like that at the drop of a hat and getting frustrated and start complaining to whoever's going to listen, things might work out. Because, like I said, there will be times in our lives when we find ourselves in dark places. We cannot control that. We're told in Scripture that when these trials and tribulations come, if you rely on God, you'll be able to endure it. It doesn't say if these trials and tribulations, it says when you face these. We can't control all the situations that happen in our life. So even though we would love to be able to do that, I imagine if we had that control to never face any dark moments in life, to never face any trials and tribulations, every person in here would take that. But we don't have that opportunity at our hands. How we respond to those situations that we get put in is what matters the most. And that's what we can control about that situation, is how we respond when we find ourselves in darkness. Are we going to respond and lash back out at somebody? Or are we going to be like Daniel and we're going to stand firm in our faith? We can either blend in and be like everyone else in this world, or we can stand out and be a light for the Lord. So my question to you is, which one are you going to be? Which one have you been in your entire life up to this point? If you look back and you say that you've been more one to blend in with the crowd, just go along with what everybody else is doing and not standing firm in your faith, ask God to forgive you of that and ask Him to help you rely on Him to stand firm in your faith. If you're here this evening and you've never put Christ on in baptism for the remission of your sins and you never started that walk, you've never had that faith to begin with, why don't you take that first step right now and put Christ on in baptism tonight? And then ask God to help you throughout your life, and He will. If you have any spiritual need now, come now as we stand and sing.
All things are ready. Come to